Good day and welcome to Code Skwela. In this session, we will be adding security to our Task Manager app. So far we don't have any sort of security in our application. We can just go in directly and add our task. So in this section, we will be adding a login page, login and logout page, so that we can have some security measures for our app. You have to remember also that for this one, we will only be dealing with one user, since if we do add multiple users to our app, it would be much a longer session and a more complex one. So for now, let's just keep in mind that we will be doing just a single user for our current application, right? So right now we're here left up with our current application. It's in its last state since we left off from our previous session. So let's just run this for a moment and see and hope that it runs properly. Okay. Right. So yeah, as you can see, our tasks are uh, immediately or instantly being loaded without any sort of login page that would require us to log in their username and password. So it's just a direct access. If you were to deploy this one, then if you are just deploying this locally, then yeah, I guess you wouldn't be bothered with adding some sort of security like a login page. But if you do deploy this sort of a public one, then yeah, you might need to add some sort of security. So let's continue. Let's just close this one. So first off, what we will do is move this uh, main bulk of our application or code application into a separate page. So right now we're getting loaded in the default index page. So let's just, for now, let's just copy this index page because this would be the same uh, page, Razor page. Let's just move it, let's paste it here. And then this is the new copy, and then let's rename this as tasks. Okay, right, we have here task, and then let's change the uh, URL for this one. It will be named task. Okay, so let's try, and then on the index page, let's just remove all of this. Okay, as we don't need this anymore. Let's remove all of this code. Right, then let's just add a title. Welcome task manager. Let's add a sub. Slug, slug into uh, task. Okay, let's try and run this if this works. So we have an error. Let's say no. So we can check the error here is task member. Okay, let's go to that. Okay, since we're a bit conflicted with our uh, component name, let's just name this. Let's rename this RR. Well, RR, and then rename this to my task. Okay, all right. Let's run this again and hope that now it would work. Okay, now we have an empty page. So since we have moved all of our main application code to the task page, we can just navigate to task page. Then it should load up. Hopefully it should load up. Yeah, okay. So now we're on a separate page, the task page. So let's add this to our navigation. so that we have quick access to our navigation. Here, let's just copy this one. Here, let's change the href to task. Let's remove this. Let's rename this to task. Let's change the icon to, say, list. Okay, let's see if that works. Should update page. Yep, we have here our task. So if you click home, we have our default home page, and then we have our tasks. Okay, so our tasks are now being loaded. Same exact code, we have no changes. We just moved it into a separate page so that we can add restrictions to this page. Okay, next, what we'll do is we'll start configuring now our uh, security. So for this one, we will be using the ASP.NET Core Identity. So currently, we are provided with a scaffolding, or sort of a wizard for generating our default templates for uh, using identity. So what we can do is start off is right click on our project and then point to add and then select new scaffolded item. Okay. So here we have different options. We just need to focus on identity and then click on identity so that our code will get scaffolded, and then click add. And then it would pick up whatever is necessary, and including the dependencies for our application to allow it to enable adding references to our identity and the different default pages that will be used. Okay, hopefully this does not take any longer. Right, now we are presented with sort of a configuration for our identity. So we have to select the layout. So what we'll do is for the default layout page, we head to our pages folder and then select this layout.cs HTML. Okay, and then here we need to set up a new context. So since it's a different one from the default EF core context, so let's just name this as identity context so that we can identify this one. Click add, and then we need to have access to our user also. So task manager app user. So I've clicked the plus button and then let's just use the default one here and then click add. Then let's click add. And then by then, uh, all the necessary libraries will be added to your project. And then it will set up the default identity folders needed for you to use the identity pages like the login, the logout, and then the register pages. Okay. Okay. So now, if you notice, there's this scaffolding readme.txt that is being displayed, which means that scaffolding has completed. And now, if you look at our Solution Explorer, the right side, we now have a new folder like areas and then identity, and then we have these folders that has been already set up for us to take advantage of the identity security, like the login pages, register page, so on. So what we want to look into is this task manager app identity context. So this is the uh, context that will be used by our identity to set up our uh, identity or security, including the necessary uh, tables and then the backend for our data for our users. Okay, and we have also our default task manager app user that inherits from identity user, right? Okay, and then we have also these other sections here, these pages that is needed by identity to set up our uh, identity pages, right? Next up is we will look into our program.cs, and if you notice, uh, what the scaffolding did is it has also added this code, this one and this one. So it has set up our identity to include the necessary configurations. Okay, so we might need to add reference to this. Okay, right? And so also need to have our access to our connection string. So since this one we will be using the same database, what we need to do is we have already the app settings that has been modified also to include our connection. So let's just rename this to uh, task manager app. Instead of identity connection context connection, let's just name it task manager app context connection. So we will be using this same configuration or connection stream with the one for our task manager app context. All right, so let's just modify this one first. So this would be the required plumbing for us to finally get set up with identity. So we have here our DB context, right, for our currently for our data. So let's just move this one. Let's copy this one, this connection string here, then replace it in here. Okay, paste that, right? And then we could use the same connection string from our app settings to our uh, connection string for our configuration with our identity. Okay, so let's name this also. Let's remove this identity, the name, and then we will need to set up or hook up our context. So we need to add services that add DB, DB context for task manager, task manager context, and let's configure ops to SQL Server, and then let's pass in the connection string. Okay, there's one thing that is missing here. The default one added by the scaffolding was only this one and this connection string. So we also need to add reference or to our DI container, this one, so that we can connect it or hook it up to our actual database. Okay, so we also need to set up our existing task manager app context. Instead of having this one, we will be using the configuration for from our app settings. So to do that, let's add a let's pass in a reference to our constructor, my configuration. Okay, then configuration, let's store it in our class configuration. Okay, let's pass it in. Let's do configuration. Okay, cool. And then let's do that here. Let's just pass in the configuration connection string. Let's remove this. Let's pass in the name of our connection string. That would be this one. Copy that. Paste it in here. Okay. So I think we have hooked up this part. Let's try running it. Hope there's no errors. Okay, now let's head onto our task page and hopefully it should still work. Okay, all right. So we have still our data for our task. So it's still getting loaded up, right? Cool. Now that we have that, the next thing we'll do is create the tables that will be needed by identity. Okay, so right now, if you look at our database, we only have one table, the task table. Uh, what we need to do now is add migrations to so that the necessary tables needed by identity will be created also. and now identity could start storing data to those tables. Okay, so what we could do now is head on to our package manager console. Let's clear this up, and then let's start adding our first migration. Okay, let's add schema, then let's specify our context. Since we have two contexts, we have the DB context and then the identity context, which is this one. So we'll just pass in the fully qualified name as an option to the context. Okay, and then let's also specify the directory that we will be placing it so that it gets placed in one location. So ideally for me, I'd place it here under areas identity data. Okay, let's specify that one. Okay, data, and then specifically the migrations folder. Okay, let's hit enter, and then it should generate the necessary migrations. Okay, so now once that's done, it displays the migration that was generated. So now what we can do next is just run the update database command so that we can uh, create the tables, or yeah, the migrations will create the tables. Okay, so to do that, let's just go back to the previous, since we have already identified the context, and then let's just put in here the database update dash database command, right? And then let's hit enter, and then while it's doing that and processing, we should notice that our table here should have new tables that is related to identity, right? Okay, now let's click this one and just refresh our explorer. Okay, let's navigate back to our table, I mean database. Okay, and then we should see here that we have all those related tables needed by identities. We have several of them. So we have uh, focus first is ASP.NET users, and then we have also roles if you do roles based, and then claims based, and so on and so forth. There's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 related tables for ASP.NET Core Identity. Okay, so now that we have that, what's next to do is let's just run this first. See if we can navigate to the login pages, or the login page and the register page. Let's try running this first before moving on to configuring the rest of the app. Okay, so you head to our address bar and then type in /identity /account /login, then hit enter. Okay, now we have an error. Okay, invalid operation exception rendered by page so script. So we have a missing section since the scaffolding has not updated our layout page to include this section. Okay, so what we can do is stop this first. Okay, let's just close this, and then let's open our layout page under pages. Okay, this will be this page, and then let's just add that section. So underneath here, the below the Blazor server script, let's just add section, right? Scripts, and then let's add the option to be not required. All right, and then let's run this again. Okay, so now let's head back again to that login page, entity account login. Okay, cool. Now we have our login page that has been provided uh, by identity from our scaffolding that we did a while ago, right? So we can just, yeah, we can try logging in here. Yeah, should prevent you from logging in since we have no data yet, or we have not registered yet or anything. There's no data on our identity tables. Okay, so you have the usual errors here. You do whatever incorrect inputs, then it would still be uh, still validate. Okay, yeah, here, password, whatever. Okay, now there are several options here provided for you. There are links below, and then we can add our first user. It will be just us. Okay. Also, before that, you might have noticed that this page doesn't follow the default layout for our app. Okay, we can do modify, or we can modify it here, but uh, during the that should be done during the scaffolding part. Okay, since we have the option there to uh, override the different sections of identity or the different pages provided by identity. Since we did not select any of those options, then we are uh, given the default one. Okay, so let's just register as a new user. Okay, let's try mail at. Okay, it's just this one would be it also has a strict options, or you can also configure the different options for the different configurations of your password, what types of passwords you want to accept. So yeah, let's click register. Okay, yeah, you can already see that it needs to confirm that the password and confirm password fields need to match. Might have typed a different one on each of those fields. Let's do that again. Okay, this time it works. Okay, now the registration was successful. So if you can see also that this app does not currently have a real email sender registered. So see the docs for configuration. So this time it has provided for us to just click here to confirm our account. Okay, if you want to actually configure to have the registered user being sent a confirmation email, we'll also have to configure that on the configuration for identity. Since that's kind of a big larger topic, we'll just skip that part and just let's accept the default one here. So let's click here to confirm your account. Then we're all good. Thank you for confirming your email. Now we should be able to log in. Okay, let's go back to login and mail. Let's try logging in. Okay, oops, wrong password. Have we something wrong? What? Okay, let's try forgot password. It's just reset password. Check reset password. Now we have a problem. Just log in. Let's try again. Or let's try registering another one. I might have messed up the password from the first one that we registered. So let's just okay. Okay. This is not good. Just type so that let's copy it. I know this isn't appropriate thing to do, but let's just but now okay, we're back with the register confirmation and then click confirm. Good. Then let's head back to the login page. Okay, and then let's just paste it here and then log in. Okay, cool. Now we were actually able to log in uh, successfully. Okay, so now we don't have any provisions for some sort of logging out feature, but we can log out by navigating to this uh, page account slash logout. Okay, and then we have a problem again. So since we have not added a use authorization, okay, let's go ahead back to our code and let's go to program. Yeah, I also forgot to mention that part of the result of the scaffolding was this one. The scaffolding added this section of code, use authentication. And then we also need to pair that with use authorization. Okay, and then let's run this again. Okay, so let's head back to our logout page. Okay, now we have provided identity had provided default logout page. Then you can just click here to log out. Then we are logged out. Okay, cool, nice. So we haven't had added any uh, security yet for our task, since here you can just still navigate to the task. Okay, then it would still get loaded up even if you're not logged in. So next we will do that. Now we will configure our different parts of our pages so that we can actually have security for each of the page or sections of our app. Okay, let's close this one. Okay, let's head to our app.razor, our main app component, and then we will have to wrap this one with cascading authentication state component. Okay, let's close this one. Okay, and then also one thing that we need to modify, of instead of using route view, we need to use the authorize route view component. Okay, now that would enable us to add security for each of our pages, different pages or Razor pages. I mean Blazor components, okay, or routable Blazor components. Next is what we can do is in our task page, we can restrict access to it by adding a attribute. Okay, the attribute would be authorize attribute. Okay, so it needs to be enclosed in this brackets. Okay, and let's try running this one and hope that, yeah, if we navigate to this page, we are not allowed to, or we get restricted. Okay, so let's just click task. And now we are presented with the default not authorized message, which means that we have added security or restriction to this page. And now, what we could also do is restrict this navigation menu, this task menu, right? We can restrict this to be only present when someone is logged in. Okay, let's just hit the close. Now to do that, let's head on to our navigation menu, and then this would be the menu, right, for our task page. We will have to wrap it with authorize view component. Okay, okay, now let's try running this again and see if uh, the task navigation menu would not be displayed. Okay, so now you have noticed that the task menu is no longer present. All right, which means that we have restricted access also to that part of our application. Okay, and also we can no longer just navigate through the address bar, since we're also restricted since we added the authorized attribute for our task page. Okay, cool. Now let's try logging in and see if we could activate those task menu and page. Okay, let's head to identity login. Then let's just log in. Okay, so now you could see that we have our task menu available now since we are logged in, and then we can just click and navigate to it. Great. So we now have enabled uh, restrictions to our pages and parts of our application. Okay. But the problem now is we don't have some sort of indication that we're logged in or logged out. Okay. So we'll add a sort of small component right next to this about link so that we have the option to log in or log out. Okay. Let's close this one. Okay, now what we'll do next is let's add a component, a Blazor component. Let's name this login display. Then here we will add the uh, sections for the options for the login and then the logout. Okay, so of course for us to add controls or restrictions to the different sections of our UI, we will have to enclose it with authorized view or use the authorized view component. Okay, so with authorized view there is two subcomponents that we can use to allow us to have access to the different options when there you are logged in or logged out. Okay, first one is authorized. So, and then the next one is not authorized. Simple enough. Next, with the authorized component, once you log in, you can uh, add contents here that for only for the logged in users. Okay, so let's say for example, we have here at context. The context one here is available by default under the authorized view, and then user the let's say identity, then dot name. Okay, and then let's add a uh, let's just leave it as is for now. Okay, and then here in the not authorized, let's add a link for logging in. Okay, so let's set the URL to the login page. Oops, should be this one. Login. Okay, and then let's add this component to our main layout. Let's just put this on top of about display. Login display. Okay, cool. Now let's run this first to see if uh, this does display the different options for logged in or logged out users. Okay, so now we have our page loaded. And then if you notice on the top right, we have displayed here the uh, message for our user, which is hi, and the username, which means that uh, this we are logged in on the application. Okay, so let's just try logging out so that we can actually see what is displayed. Click here to log out, then head back to our home page, and then yeah, then there's this option for logging in. Let's click login, and then we are directed to the login page, and then just log in. Then we successfully log in, then we'll get sent back to our home page, which is now here. And then yeah, so I think we're all good. Now what's missing here is for us to have a logout option. So right now, currently our logout is we'll need to navigate right to the identity account slash logout page. Now what we need, or what we can do now, is integrate or add a separate option here for logout, sort of a link that we can display like logout. And then when a user clicks that, then you can just immediately get logged out without navigating to the logout page. Okay, let's do that now. Now this one is a little bit complicated, since with the logout page, it's usually it's a form that you send a post to the identity logout endpoint, which processes the logging out. But the thing is that it needs the request token. Now for us to do that, we'll need to add some modifications again to our app. Let's head on to our host page. Under pages, we have underscore host.chhtml, right? Since the request token isn't available directly on Blazor pages, but it's only available directly on uh, MVC pages and Razor pages, right? Since Blazor is a different type of model. So here we can expose the request token and then pass it to our main app component, wherein we can store it so that we can use it later for our logout function. Okay, now to do that, we'll have to have a variable here. Let's declare a variable that is, before we do that, let's inject the anti-forgery uh, interface here. Checked anti-forgery. Oops, anti-forgery interface. Anti-forgery. Okay, let's name this, and then let's pull in the necessary references. So ASP.NET Core anti-forgery library. Okay, now we have access to it. What we can do is just anti-forgery dot get and store tokens. So we'll have to pass the context, HTTP context. Okay, then let's get the request token. Okay, now that we have that, we'll now pass it to our main app component. Okay, so to do that, we need to have a param, or pass in as a parameter request token. Request token, right? So that's the first part. The next part is we'll have to modify our app.razor. Okay, here we will set up and receive the uh, request token. But before we can do that, let's add a class that we can store or pass around our application. Okay, let's just set this token provider, right? Then let's add a property type string, since the token is just a string of request token. Okay, and then what we need to do is check that one so that we can have access to it, so that we can pass data around, right? We can do that through the EI services. Okay, dot scope type token provider. Okay, so now that we have that, what we can do next is, in our back to our app razor page, let's inject it. token provider. Let's just pull in the references for this one. Okay, now let's add the code so that we can store it here, or I mean we can initialize the token provider with the request token that is passed into this component. Okay, let's add a string request token, right? Because you have noticed that in our uh, host type app component, we have this parameter request token, which was pass in the request token from here, this part. Okay, it's a bit confusing at first, but this is what it is as of the moment, since the request token isn't directly available within Blazor components. Okay, so let's override the initialized. Okay, then let's pass in the request token so that it can we can other components can have access to this request token, especially the one on the login display component. Okay, request token, let's pass in the request. Okay, now that we have that plumbing, what we could do now here is on our login display, we will add a option for logging out. So since the identity logout endpoint, you need to make a post request to it. So we'll have a form here, and then let's add a method post. Okay, and then we need to specify the action, which is the identity dot account slash logout. The same address for the one that we have just used for logging out manually. Okay, next let's add a button logout. Then let's set the type, submit, and then let's make it look like a link. So let's just add a class button and then button link. Okay, it should look good. Then let's inject the token provider. Checked token provider. Let's add a reference to this one. Okay, cool. Okay, now let's just try running this first so that we can see what it looks like. Okay, so we have a issue here, an error. Task Manager app property matching the name request token does not have. Okay, so we forgot to specify the parameter. Okay, stop this and then go to App Razor. We forgot to add an attribute here as a parameter. Okay, right. Let's run this again. Okay, cool. Now we have our logout button. Now if we click on this one, oops, we have a problem. It doesn't, or it wasn't able to find the page or the endpoint. HTTP error 400 not found, right? So we need to do next is to add the token request token, since this is supposed, if you are familiar with Razor pages or uh, ASP.NET Core, right? We need to have request tokens passed in between uh, request, especially if it's a uh, form request, right? So to do that, we need to have a input of type hidden, and then we will set this as name is equal to request verification verification token, and then the value would be the token provider dot request token. Okay, let's set this first. See everything right now. If you notice, we have added this section. Now this one would be, let's continue. This one would be required. So this is what will be needed for the identity to actually verify that uh, the request is uh, legit. Okay, so let's stop this first and run this again. If you are uh, quite unsure of why we are doing this, it's quite a complex topic when it comes to this, because this is part of security wherein you do the anti-cross site request forgery security. I don't know if call it uh, some sort of security threat. So that's why we are doing this kind of thing to our logout function. Okay, let's run this again and see and hope that it works. Okay, and now our page has loaded, and then we have now our logout again. Let's click logout, and then we have successfully logged out. Right, cool. But the problem is that we are stuck in the logout page. Now we can modify this a bit, and then here in our action, let's just add return URL is equal to slash, or the home page. Okay, let's head back here to our home page, and then let's try logging in. Okay, let's log in. Should be uh, sent back to our home page. Okay, now we are at the home page. Then we have our task. Okay, cool. Then we can log out. Click log out, and then yeah, we are sent back to the home page. So please log in to view your task. Okay, cool. So now that is how you add security to our task manager app using the ASP.NET Core Identity library. Okay, but the thing is that for this one, it's only a single user. If you are thinking of doing multi-user application for this one, then you might have to do a little bit more complex than what we currently have, since right now we don't have an option for uh, adding multiple users and then different users can access only their data. If you want to do that, then we'll have to add more complexity to it, but that will be for a different topic or section, hopefully in the future. Okay, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again in our next session.